Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss Analyze This, starring Robert De Niro, Billy Crystal, Lisa Kudrow, Joe Vittorelli, and Chaz Palminteri, and directed by Harold Ramis. Now, I remember watching this a long time ago, not in theaters, but on video, like when it was probably new on video or something like that. My dad owned it, and I wanted to see the clip where De Niro goes, You, you. And I watched that a few times as a kid until eventually I was old enough to go watch the film. But was it a funny movie or a good movie? Let's get into this, shall we? We get a narration by mafia boss Paul Vitti, played by Robert De Niro, about how big the year 1955 was, and we get all the mob bosses together, and the mob bosses get caught, and his father steals a tractor, and we see Paul meeting with his boss, or his friend Dominic, I guess, gets shot while Paul ducks down and covers his assistant Jelly, played by Joe Vittorelli, which is the way to open a comedy about a mob boss. And like The Godfather Part 2, De Niro pulls the mobster part very well. Psychiatrist Dr. Ben Sobel, played by Billy Crystal, while meeting with Caroline, who was Molly Shannon in this movie, as she cries a bunch and that character was very fucking annoying. Meanwhile, Paul tortures a guy to find out who killed Dominic, which is a good first 10 minutes. And Ben is introduced to Jelly, and he and his son Michael are late for a party at his parents' place. And as Ben's parents are so mean to Ben as they don't come to his wedding as the father is super focused on his book signings. And can I just say, worst parents ever on Ben's part? Paul has a heart attack and goes to the hospital and beats up on the doctor. And Paul wants to see a psychiatrist about Jelly's, or maybe his own issues, even though he says it's about Jelly. Paul visits Ben and kicks out the previous patient. And I love the scene for the chemistry between Paul and Ben as Paul discusses his issues. And I love how comedic the last 2 minutes of the scene when Paul says to Ben, "You've got a gift, my friend." That's the scene I was talking about earlier. It just cracks me up, and these characters are very funny to watch on screen, and I like being around them right off the bat. We meet Primo Sedone, played by Chaz Palminteri, who says the name Vitti haunts him since he was a kid, and once Paul and the audience finds out before the first 30 minutes of the movie that he wants Paul dead, which was a smart choice, but not for Paul to find out until later in the movie. Ben and Michael go to Miami Beach and meet up with Laura McNamara, played by Lisa Kudrow, and while they're at Miami Beach, Paul wants to see Ben and lets Jelly kidnap him in the middle of the night, and they talk about Paul's issues again at a bar. And Ben doesn't want to help Paul as Paul cries hysterically, and Ben decides to help him for 2 weeks. And De Niro's hysterical crying does make me laugh, despite it's not supposed to be funny, but I'm still laughing at this point. Ben gets back to his hotel room and calms Laura down for the night. And while at SeaWorld, or some kind of SeaWorld at Miami Beach, he gets rudely interrupted by Jelly and Jimmy and thrown in the shark tank and walks with Paul on the beach. And they go back to his hotel room, and De Niro and Crystal act well together until we get Analyze That, which will be replaced by that movie. We get to Ben and Laura's night before their wedding night, and Paul shows up with his family and wants to talk with Ben. And we move on to the wedding scene, and Paul and Jeffrey get attacked, or Jelly, excuse me. I keep calling him Jeffrey. Why do I do that? By one of Primo's assistants, and that's when he finds out who wants him dead, as it's Primo, and the wedding is interrupted and crashed, and Ben is fed up with Paul's bullshit. And Ben is suggesting to call Primo to tell him how he's feeling and bursts into anger and threatens him and shoots a pillow, which was the funniest moment in the movie. And the throwing the assassin moment was a good introduction to that scene. We get back to New York, and Paul sends Ben to the fountain, and the FBI visit Ben and Paul about Paul as he's treating him, and they want Ben to spy on Paul, and he unfortunately has to accept by wearing a wire, as Ben has a dream that is the same scene as The Godfather, where Ben is shot and Paul calls him Papa, which was a great funny reference. And the next scene, they're at a church and Ben wants to talk with Paul, and a man whose brother has died kisses and hugs him, not on the lips. And I'm enjoying myself watching this movie. It's hilarious. They're at a restaurant that Paul likes going to, as his father died there, and Paul acts differently as he knows he's going to kill Ben. And Ben, halfway through the scene, takes off the wire while in the bathroom as they take off and find a quiet section where Paul will try to kill Ben as he talks to Paul, and Paul is crying as some assassins follow up and behind them and shoot at them while Paul is crying, which is hilarious because who the fuck cries in the middle of a shootout? Even though this was before a shootout, I'll say, which was a great shootout as Ben picks up the gun and shoots back, which is unlike Billy Crystal to do in any movie, but I was laughing out loud. Paul prepares to face Primo as sees a commercial about fathers and sons, and he cries once again, while Ben marries Laura because the first one time was crashed as Jilly and Jimmy come in to kidnap Ben to take him to a meeting with Primo while the FBI follows them to the meeting until they split up in the tunnel. While Paul is ready to go to the meeting as Jelly, Jimmy, and Ben arrive at the meeting with a nice suit, I'll say, and that suit is pretty damn nice, I'm not gonna lie. And Primo expects Paul to be there as Primo starts the meeting talking about Paul, and Ben interrupts and constantly interrupts Primo and slapping Jilly around, and all of this is the laugh out loud moment of the whole film. And Billy Crystal has the best lines in the whole movie. Fucking movie. Or, well, not the movie, but the scene. As this is my dad's way of saying this line. Did you talk to the guy? Like that, see? Primo almost kills Ben until Paul shows up and talks his way out of the mob family and walks away with Ben, and they have a shootout, and the cops show up, and Paul goes to prison, and Ben is happily married to Laura while Ben is still alive. And the climax has some funny lines that you have to watch in order to understand the scene. And the entire movie has some very funny lines, as this is a very funny film. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 8.0 out of 10. This movie has so much going on, and the chemistry between De Niro and Crystal is great to watch, as it'll get flushed away by the next movie. The cries by De Niro is hysterical, not that it's meant to be, and the dialogue works great, as this is a very funny movie with some very funny lines, and I enjoyed myself with this movie, and I can't wait to watch this for some good laughs in my future, as the movie works great. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time I will be back with Analyze That, strangely. And until next time, you're very good, you.